Welcome to Oh the Humanities, a podcast produced by the University of New England Center for Global Humanities. Our conversations are devoted to shining a light on the important work being done in the humanities at UNE and other colleges across the U.S. and around the world. My name is Josh Pahigian, and I'm your host. My guest today is University of New England political science professor Ali Ahmida, who joins me in studio on UNE's beautiful Biddeford campus. Ali's cross-cultural scholarship focuses on power, agency, genocide, and anti-colonial resistance in North Africa, especially in modern Libya. Ali and I have been friends since 2004 when I first arrived at UNE. At that point, Ali had been here for more than a decade already. And in the years since, we've bounced various creative projects off each other. We've had the pleasure of mentoring students who took each of our courses, and we traded stories and proud moments as we watched them go off and flourish after having their time with us. And it's really my pleasure to record our latest conversation today for listeners to enjoy. This is just the latest. We've, through the years, met over a number of meals, many coffees at a local cafe we're both known to frequent, and we've really enjoyed a rich friendship through the years. I look forward to telling people about Ali's, or letting Ali tell people about his amazing scholarship. But first, let's meet our guest. Ali, welcome to Oh the Humanities.
Josh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So Ali, I actually remember one of our very first conversations, and I think you will too. I was up in Marseille Hall on the second floor where I had an adjunct office and you had an office at the time, and we shared a copy machine back before Google Docs, when we would actually make copies and hand them out to the students. And I was making copies one day, and you came up and I introduced myself, and I think at the time, I know I was publishing baseball books, but I had just published one of the short stories I wrote about the Armenian American cultural experience, and I started talking about that, and you said something like, well, we have a shared family history, our heritage, for both of us sort of born in genocide, and you started to talk about genocide in Libya, and I remember being kind of embarrassed. I was like, what did I miss in high school? Or how come I've never heard of this before? And you really were a trailblazer in, it wasn't just me that didn't know about the Libyan genocide. It was a lot of historians, a lot of political scientists. It wasn't something widely known to the world. And that continued for many years further because your extensive research actually took you 15 years of interviewing survivors, of getting access to the Italian archives, which had been closely guarded as history tried to sort of snuff out the reality of what had happened decades and decades before in Libya. So rather than me say any more and sort of tell the story of your project, I'd love to hear you just tell the story of the research that led to your latest book.
Yes, I do remember our conversation a while ago, and to my delight, I remember discovered that we had the shared family experiences, the Armenian genocide, and also the Libyan genocide. And I think this is really became ongoing, fruitful friendship and conversations led to me telling you about the ups and downs of that research and connecting with your own heritage and your own background. I started the research in the year 2000. And let me say that when I started, I thought, this case may be very well known. I'm just going to go in depth and investigate what happened between 1929 and 1934 under Italian fascist colonization in the country Libya that time, before the Holocaust. And when I started, I thought that people would be familiar with it. And to my shock, I discovered that whole horrible genocide was erased from modern scholarship, not to mention public opinion, knowledge of it. And I'll give you, Josh, a brief encounter when by the mid 2005, I was invited. I published one piece based on my earlier research, and I was invited to Brown, to Yale University, which has one of our most prestigious comparative genocide center, Berkeley, UC Berkeley, UCLA, Washington University, Columbia, and Harvard, and also Georgetown. Our leading academic institutions. And I usually begin my talk by asking, has anybody knew anything about the concentration camps under Italian colonialism between 1929 and 1934? And to my shock, nobody knew about it. They say, Professor, is there such a thing? So my research evolved from that point in 3 continents, in 3 languages, to figure out what happened between 1929, when 100,000 to 120,000 people, civilians, including children, women, and elderly folks, were removed from their homeland in eastern Libya to the desert of central Libya called Sirte. And then by 1934, only around 35 to 30,000 came alive. So the puzzle of my research, what happened? And I saw myself as investigating reporter or scholar or legal judge who tried to see where is the evidence, what happened there. And I think because of the reaction of scholars and leading universities, I realized that the case was the fascists and people who advocated benign Italian fascism succeeded. And the second point is I became, what happened in that period, why people died, and what's the memory and what's the evidence for it? Second, why memory has been erased. How do we explain modern scholarship silence and collective amnesia in Europe, in our own United States? And that led to a very hard, long research journey and discovery. I started in 2000, and when the Italian archives were shot in my face because people are still in denial in Italy up until now, I would say. I ran into an elderly scholar, very conscientious scholar by the name of Angelo Del Boca, and he said, son, don't waste your time with them because they either removed those files, the Italian colonial archives, or they manipulated them. And I said, oh God, what should I do? I'm doomed. So he said, if I were you, you're still young, go to Eastern Libya and see if the survivors will be willing to talk to you. And that led to the second phase, archival research, and then oral history and field work. I thought usually it takes me 4 to 5 years to research a book and go in depth in it. This took 10 years. And eventually I collected 350 interviews among men and women.
And this was 70 years approximately after the time period they were recalled. Exactly. So they had been children.
They were children. The others are passed away.
Right.
But they were children between the age of 5 and 10. It was very funny because when I went to see them, they said, who are you? Who are your parents? Who are your grandparents? What are you going to do with this research, professor? Are you going to become a big shot and forget about us? Are you going to show us? I said, no. My parents are so-and-so. And what saved my case, both my grandparents fought in the anti-colonial resistance. So that gave me I bless my grandparents because they gave me a carte blanche. And my grandmother, my mother's side, was from Eastern Libya, among the people who were interned. That also gave me a second entry. So people, these survivors and their children and grandchildren trusted me. And after that, they began to talk to me. And I didn't want to hurry. I didn't want to have, few elegant cases and say, yay, I have a scholarly book. I really wanted to do this very thoroughly. I wanted to really find the truth and allow the survivors' voices to be heard. And after that, I found breakthrough in our American archives, which was taken from Italy after World War II. I found some material in England. I found some archives in Tunisia by the French, and in Arabic in Egypt. And the Center of Libyan Studies in Tripoli gave me all the collected material. So they trusted me as well. And then for 5 years, I spent those 5 years from 2010 to 2015 investigating, verifying the evidence. And thank God, Josh, that I started my research in 2000. Had I waited to 2010, most of the survivors either perished or the political turmoil in Libya after 2011 will not facilitate a very heavy, faceted research and cross-cultural and cross-continent and cross-language research like the one. The book really was painful, hard, but at the end it was rewarding because I think I figured the puzzle and the riddles of this erased crime. And I didn't call it genocide. I went with an open attitude as an investigating scholar. And then the criteria that set by the Polish Jewish father of modern genocide and the UN 1948 criteria for genocide, which is intentionality, destruction, and also replacing it, led to the fact that I confirmed 2 Italian scholars, very, very exceptional, who said what happened at that episode before the Holocaust was a real genocide. And I concurred. And then, therefore, I called the book Genocide in Libya, but I took the language of the survivors. They said, when I said, why people died in these camps? They said, son, we died because of shar. And shar in Arabic, their language, meant specific meaning collective death because of starvation and diseases. So I said, I want to have that word in the book. And I want the whole world to know, as we say, shawa, or a word that has specific meaning. I want everybody to remember these people, what happened to them. And I think as a result of that, everybody tell me, this is true. We know shar, which means in Arabic literally evil. And Hannah Arendt, in her seminal work, Eichmann in Jerusalem, The Banality of Evil. So we have the connection and affinity between a colonial genocide that was 10 years earlier than the Holocaust, and the Holocaust after that, and before that, the Armenian and the Namibian genocide, and before that, the infamous Congo genocide and the Belgian colonialism.
They don't occur in isolation, right? There's like this through line. There's the famous quote from Hitler, who now speaks of the Armenians as a way to sort of...
Who remembers the Armenians?
Yes,
remember, that's his statement.
Exactly. And you found that there was actually some cooperation or conversation between the Italians and what they communicating what they had done in Libya with the actual Nazis. As the Nazis were planning, I believe toward the end of your book, you get into the Nazis actually studying Libya as a case study, how they could execute their own terrible plans.
Yes, Josh. What happened one day, and as I said, I didn't want to hurry this book. I was reading a colonial magazine, sponsors magazine in Arabic, and I saw a picture of one of the Nazi leaders in the colony in Tripoli with the governor of Libya, colonial governor of Libya called Balbo. So I said to myself, is this a coincidence? Oh, just follow a Nazi leader vacationing in the Mediterranean in the beautiful beaches of Libya that time. And then the inquisitive, scholarly side of my mind said, why don't you just verify this? And I stumbled in something big. I discovered that there were many visits, and the Nazi leaders were interested not in the French model of colonialism, not the British, but the Italian model, especially in Libya, where they depopulated and the civilian population of the country, and they were dreaming of settling at least between 500,000 to 1 million Italian peasants and workers in Libya. And for the German Nazis, they had, this is very attractive. They wanted to settle millions of German citizens in Eastern Europe. And the removal of the local people was very attractive to them. Mm-hmm. So that's how did I discover this? I read Italian well, I read French, very, very fairly. And I'm very versed, of course, in Arabic. So what I did, I wrote, I found this, a German historian who specialized in consular reports between Nazi Germany and Italian fascist Italy, and the reports from Tripoli to Rome to Berlin. And I said, Patrick, is this really coincidence or there is something bigger? And he said, Ali, no, this is bigger. And he wrote me 4 papers confirm something much bigger, but covered. So there was a cover-up, but much bigger. And the new book I'm writing now is investigating what the Nazi connection and how the Nazi connection with the Italian concentration camps in Libya, that I call the Libyan genocide, contributed to the making of the Holocaust, which I believe with the Congo genocide, with the Namibian genocide, which I studied very fairly and I teach here on my class, Empire and Genocide at UNE, will change our understanding of the Holocaust, because it's not just a unique an aberration, but really, very much linked to the previous genocides from 19th century to early 20th century to the Holocaust. And this direct connection is a huge discovery, and that will be the topic of my new investigation later on.
Well, definitely looking forward to seeing your continued work with that, because it definitely seems like, as I said, these don't occur in a vacuum, these terrible atrocities. It's sort of step by step. One country borrows from the next, and one regime borrows from the next, and makes worse and worse.
Yes, it's direct connection, but also indirect one. Remember, and you are a professor of literature and English, and at UNE I teach The Heart of Darkness by Conrad.
Conrad, of course, yeah.
Who was really cited highly by Hannah Arendt. But a lot of people who are very, very much blinded by Eurocentrism, they don't see what happened in the colonies. And now, because of this really heavy research, and I got immersed in the whole modern studies of genocide, including the Holocaust, I am, with a few other scholars, creating a new field, colonial genocides and the Holocaust as linked to colonial genocides. This is what it is. And the book, I was very, very, very lucky, because the book very well received. I still get invitation from all over the world, and I'm committed to 3 presentations this fall. And the book in 2022 won the Carl Brown Book Award, which is really heartened me and really made me very happy, because this long commitment to this really tough, nasty, very, very obscure case now is available to students and scholars all over the globe. And it gives me a lot of pride as a UNE faculty and scholar, because I researched with colleagues like you, Support, Susan McHugh, Beth DeWolf, my own students who became very interested, and I wanted me to finish this book. It really gives me great pleasure that it was done, even though it took 15 long years.
We were all rooting through the ups and downs along with you, and some days you'd kind of wear your heart on your sleeves. And you were very collaborative in terms of like involving us in the conversations around the different topics in the book, and the process of editing it and fact-checking things.
Exactly. I believe, as I was trained by good teachers at the University of Washington early age, and with my father as an example, I'm a third-generation teacher. My grandfather was a teacher. My father was a teacher, and I rebelled. I thought I will not do it, and I ended becoming a teacher. So
it was your destiny.
Yes. So it's in the genes in the Ahmida family, and I think I always thought that these projects are not just a solo projects. Mm-hmm. The more you involve your colleagues, the more you involve your students, it becomes fruitful projects. And their inputs are always thoughtful and enrich your research. It's not just a matter of I'm going to hide in my office and I'm going to squeeze my brain or go to my lab and produce something. Now, that's not the way I operate. Especially my work is not just one monodisciplinary. As you know, I bring theories, critical material from political theory and comparative, historical sociology and anthropology, and also poetry and literature fares well in my research, and also in my teaching as well.
So you mentioned poetry, and we'll get to some of your own poetry a little bit later on, but in the book, a lot of the memories of the genocide were conveyed through oral tradition and poetry that the people continue to tell generation after generation. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that.
I'm glad you asked that question, Josh, because this is really at the heart of this book. Because I'll tell you a story about my late mother. My late mother didn't go to school because she was in exile, because her father was a freedom fighter and the Italian want to hang him, the Italian fascists want to hang him. So he escaped after the military defeat of the resistance to a country called Chad. Mm-hmm. And my mother was born in exile. My sister sometimes say, thank God she didn't go to school, because we'll be in big trouble if she went to school. My mother, she didn't talk much. She had a great sense of humor, but because of her culture through her mother and grandmother, you ask her a question and she replied to you, Josh, either with a proverb or a beginning of a poem. And I remember when I used to say, oh, mother, I'm ill. I'm so ill. And she would say to me, I'm ill except Dar Egela. And I didn't know what she's talking about. It turned to be, after my research, that Egela is the Auschwitz of the Libyan genocide, the worst concentration camp in the desert of Sirte. So she memorized a poem which became the haunting counter memory to the erasure of history by Italian fascists. A poet by the name of Rajab Bouhouesh was interned. He was among the few learned ones. He was a teacher, was interned in this concentration camp called Egela. And he wrote an epic poem, 5 pages long. And that poem was memorized by the fellow interned Libyans that time. And it became recited and recited and recited, and it haunted the horrors of the concentration camps. I translated this in the book, so it's available in English language and reviewed by a dear friend of mine at the University of Michigan, who's an American poet. And then I realized something very, very essential. Archival research is not enough. Field work is important, archival research is important, but more important, how the people who were in these camps, the 100 or 120,000 people, how did they express themselves? What's their culture? How they recorded their trauma and their suffering? And so thousands of people die in front of them because of starvation and diseases. And then I discovered the salience of two things: cultural expression, orality, and also poetry. They expressed and communicated with each other through poetry. And then I began to educate myself about what kind of poetry, what kind of slang, vocabulary, metaphor, way of expressions. And I spent almost 2 years trying to learn about the cultural way of expressing themselves. And therefore, poetry that was written during the internment became a powerful way of recording what happened to them from their own perspective. Because the Italian fascists, what they said in their memoirs and their biographies, they say these Bedouin and these nomads are uncivilized inferiors. We have to drag them into modernity, even if we wipe most of them. So that's how poetry became very important, and has a very, very big section of the book, because it allowed me. I wanted to write the book from the point of view of the survivors, and not from the elites in Libya or the fascists, God forbid, in Italy. And this book is now causing big, big problems in Italy. And the advocates of Italian benign and moderate fascism compared with the Nazi state is really debunked in the most profound way. And a dear colleague who is an eminent American scholar of North Africa really made me feel very good. She said that it took a Libyan American scholar to finally, after 80 years, to resolve the riddles of this crime. And we could have lost it, and no millions of dollars, no other people, unless they are equipped to do it and are patient to investigate it, could have done it. And that really touched me very much. And I told her that that's very, very, it means, everything I spent in trying to resolve this issue worthwhile. It's not just scholarly book, it's about truth and about humanity and about really linking that experience with other people.
Well, it's an incredible tribute to your skill as a scholar, as a researcher, as a human, just being able to connect with so many people. One more question on this topic before we switch gears and talk about your poetry a little bit.
Yeah.
You talked about the very warm reception there's been for the book in academia and the pushback from the Italian side. I was wondering, what's the response to the book been from Libya? Have you had, by the time the book came out, had most of the survivors that you had interviewed passed away, or were there still some that you could be in communication with? And was the publication of the book validating for them? Was it worthwhile for them just to see that the world knew their story? Did you have a chance to get feedback from them? I know that the Arab Spring occurred in the meantime, and it was harder to go back and forth for you to visit some of those same people. But I'm just wondering what the response was from Libya.
Well, it's very interesting. That's a good question, Josh. The last 2 years, last year I went to visit my sisters and my brother and my brothers, and also I usually like to go once a year to visit, for not only for research, just to see family and friends. And I gave 2 talks in Benghazi and El Baida, where most of the interned people came from, or their grandparents, for that matter. In Benghazi, the reception was splendid. Except they said, not Libya, the whole Libya. Only we are in Eastern Libya who suffered. The other people didn't suffer like us, Professor. So we should say Eastern Libya, and that's it. I said, okay. Is Eastern Libya, is in China or Korea or Japan or Libya?
We are still talking about Libya, yes.
Yes. But the others, they were very, very pleased. In the University of Al Baida, the reception, because they were immediate descendants of the people who were interned, it was very moving, very appreciative, and I was very humbled by their gratitude and appreciation. And they told me, people like you come to us only once every 100 years. I said, I hope not. And I think they were very, very appreciative. Now, the book, and you read it really and commented on it earlier, Josh, it's not an easy book. You have to be alert. It's multidisciplinary, theoretically very engaging, and bring other cases to it. So it's really present the Libyan case to the world, not just to the Libyan people themselves. So some of them are struggling with it. But since the publication of the book 2021 and my visit last year, I have done 5 TV interviews, including one with a lady called Fadwa, where she asked me, where do you come from? Nobody knows about you, and suddenly you come with this really book. Who are you, and who raised you, who educated you, and where you got educated in America, and so we had 2 hours, 1 hour telling them about my upbringing, and the second one I told them about my research and my education, and also where I teach at UNE. So it was almost introducing me to them. And the second, there was a Saudi podcaster like you, Josh, which I think what you're doing is terrific, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
He had something called finjan. Finjan means a cup of coffee, where Arabic coffee, or what we call Turkish coffee, it drinks like espresso. So finjan means a little cup. And he said that we looked at everything and we found you and we want to interview you. So they prepared for a long interview. They flew me to New York City. And they had 3.5 hours interview with me about my background and the book. And I said, his name's Abdurrahman, the one who interviewed me. I said, Abdurrahman, who is in this world, this time and this age, will listen to 3.5 hours? They will be bored to death. I'm afraid you're going to put yourself in. And to my shock, Josh, the podcast is still being listened to, and now it reached 1,700,000 listeners.
Wow!
None of my interviews reached that level. So this is very strange, and it's a long one. Yeah. So I must have maybe had a blessing from God that I said the right thing or the right stories. And to complete the answer, I'm still having interviews, and I try to not to reach the elite. I try to reach the ordinary citizens, the subaltern people who, you don't want to be too academic, right, too jargon oriented, and tell the stories.
Yeah.
And my goal or my dream in the future is to fight this idea of silence, and hope that they will have a museum for them, and also that their stories will be introduced not only in Libya but also in Italy. Italy is going to be very hard, Josh, because the Italian elite, there was no war crimes like Nuremberg.
Right. No accountability.
No accountability. Yeah. And unfortunately, and the cover-up is in the book, the Allies tried to appease the Italian fascists to fight the Nazi leaders, and they were afraid of the Communist Party. So the Italian fascists thought that they are just benign conservative boys. And therefore, in Italy, no education, no accountability, with the exception of few courageous scholars who stood out. But the the amnesia continues in Italy. And this book, I hope that will lead to a new conversation, because it's really my belief that we no longer, can understand Europe without understanding Africa. And even us Americans, there is no way our curriculum and our core can really be the same thing as an isolated continent. But we need to understand what goes on in Vietnam, in the Philippines, in the Middle East, in Central America, and other. And I will also argue, as I tell my students, people outside Europe and outside our own United States cannot understand their history and their institution and their experience without understanding us in the United States. So it's really, I'm trying to push a new field, a new research agenda, a new curriculum in the 21st century, where I felt the book was just give us a breakthrough, but the work has to be done in so many other areas and continue that way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're really at the forefront of some incredible work. The book is Genocide in Libya, and the subtitle is Shar, A Hidden Colonial History. Let's switch gears now, Ali, and talk a little bit about your poetry. And this is something I've known you for 20 years, 21 years, as we said earlier, and only recently did I become aware that you were also a poet. And the premises of that was kind of sad. One of your dear friends had passed away, and you wrote a beautiful poem to eulogize him. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that project and how it reconnected you with this creative side of yourself, a way of coping through the creation of poetry.
Oh, that's another good one, Josh. we have we go to the humanities and, of course, literature. I actually, when I was in high school, middle school and high school, I studied music, and I fell in love with literature because I grew up in a small town in southern Libya in the middle of the desert, and you would be bored to death because there isn't much after school. So I was in the Boy Scouts. I studied music for 6 years, and I read everything that my dad brought me from Tripoli or the 5 libraries in my city. And I fell in love with literature. And I remember I had this crush on this girl in my high school, and I never spoke to her. So she left town.
What was her name, Ali?
Her name is Sahar. And the sad and pathetic thing, she never knew that I had a crush on her. So I went to my grandmother, and I was really devastated. And I wrote these silly poems. They were really very, very, and she would say, son, they are terrific. They are not terrific. Until my senior year in high school, I wrote this poem, and the teacher told me, Ali, this is very good. And it was published in a local, in a Tripoli newspaper in the cultural section. Then I began seriously to write poetry. So poetry and reading was really ingrained in the community where I grew up. My father, my teachers. I was very much encouraged to continue reading, and I was a voracious reader as a kid. A little bit a nerd, I would say, but a voracious reader. And then when I went to Cairo with a fantastic scholarship in a small liberal arts college in Cairo, I continued to write poetry, and they published 8 of them there. I asked a friend of mine last year when I told you I went to visit the survivors and 2 Libyan universities. We had dinner at his place, and he gave me a gift. He said, Ali, this is a gift for you, but I have one condition. This guy keeps everything. He has incredible documentation mindset. So he gave me 8 of my published poems, and he said, I want you to publish them. They are terrific. I said, Salim, his name was Salim. Salim, people will have a laugh. The professor now, he want to become a poet, and something he wrote in high school, that silly stuff.
So how many years had passed? Like 50 years in between?
Yes,
40 years in between?
yeah, 40 years.
40
or so.
years, yeah.
Yes. So he said to me, I think they are published, and they are, people should read them. And then when I came back, to Maine, I asked a dear friend of mine called Khalid Mutawa at University of Michigan, a very eminent Libyan American poet. I said, listen, Khalid, Salim al-Qubti gave me a gift, and he thinks I'm really hesitant. People will laugh at me. I said, Ali, what the hell he's doing? He said, no, because people know you as a scholar, as a Libyan American scholar, but they don't know that you also grow up with there are other aspects of your life and biography that might be interesting. I would say yes. So then I called my sister. I said, is there anything else? I don't have my archives, my papers. They are all with my sister in Libya and my brother. So she sent me a collection. I chose two. One is My Grandpa Sings, which I liked. And then a girl I met in a music competition in Tripoli. She gave me her and all this, sound very sappy and romantic, her handkerchief. So say, Aisha's handkerchief. And so that the collection, I gave it to a Libyan publisher who said, we love it because that's really a side of you we don't know. And the title of the collection is called Who Will Sing With Me This Melody of Joy? And I wrote in the introduction that in time of despair, in time of crisis, in time of depression, humanity needs poetry, because poetry gives us a little bit of hope, a little bit of solace, a little bit of uplifting our spirits, and that humanity has composed and listened to poetry and art for centuries. And
that's beautiful what you just said. That's the essence of what this show is, the humanities and connecting with our humanity.
So I almost like I have a full circle now, Josh. I started with a kid who was a very voracious, played music in the marching band of his small town, a Boy Scout, and a aspiring poet who wanted to study film and become filmmaker. And I ended by studying economics and political science, and then became a social scientist. And but now, going back to poetry, I think not only people I needed it to give me a little bit of hope and a little bit of solace and a little bit of imagination, positive imagination. And the humanities and the social sciences are the best that can uplift our spirit.
Well, that's really well said, and I think we all need some hope in these days of extreme polarization and democratic decline.
Yes.
We need something to grasp onto that just connects us with who we are and hope, as you say. I thought as a way of ending our conversation today, Ali, perhaps I could twist your arm and ask you to read just a little bit of your poetry for listeners.
It will be my pleasure. In 2016, a dear friend of mine who was with me in Cairo and was the Libyan ambassador to Spain passed away with cancer. And suddenly, poetry came back after long silence and being consumed by the social science and teaching and scholarship and other things. Suddenly, the ability to compose poetry came back, which is, I cannot explain it to you, Josh.
It must have always been there.
Yeah.
You just weren't tapping into it, latent power that you had.
He was a dear, dear friend. And this poem was written in memory.
And what was his name, Ali?
His name is Muhammad Faqih Saleh. And by the way, Dune, our UNE library magazine, took it, and actually it's available there. And it gives me pleasure that our library at UNE now magazine has this most recent poem that I have composed. And the title of I was mourning him, and this poem helped me recover or deal with the a mourning and loss.
Yeah.
I called it, Why Did You Leave So Soon, My Friend? Why, Muhammad, why did you leave me so soon in my self-imposed exile? To whom shall I talk and repeat the stories of our youth, our years of joy and hope? To whom shall I lament? The land of flowers and henna, which nested in our youth souls and we still love in our old age. How shall we face the ancestors in their shrines, in their tales of exile and their poems with memorized and sang? To whom, Muhammad, I repeat and repeat our stories and jokes about simple folks in Tripoli, Wadan, Sabha, Benghazi, and the mighty Cairo. Do you remember our first meeting in Cairo College of Economics and Political Science? The pretty female students at the cafe, the rebel writers who became our friends, Ali, Amal, and Hilmi, and the now fabled Abdul Karim Al-Jarrahi group. Why did you leave so soon? You son of Tripoli and its good artisans, keepers of the great poet flame, Ganaba, Rigai, Rafiq, and Shaltami, decent and generous, quick-tempered but forgiving. You survived the dictator's prison and his sadistic hollow men. They could not break you, and your spirit has outlived them. You loved poetry, books, and the literature of all people. Within you, your homeland, your proud culture, the dreams of forgotten ones, and our humanity stood conjoined in your heart. To whom shall I talk, vent, and share good laugh, and harvest of our year, our nights, youth, and pain? Salam, and God's mercy upon you, dear brother. You will be forever with our beloved light, forever guiding the lost.
Beautiful. Ali, you're a generous friend, a gifted poet, and a preeminent scholar, and it was my pleasure to have you here for a conversation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh, very much. I truly enjoyed our conversations, and it's been a great pleasure.
That's it for this episode of the Humanities. As always, thanks for listening, and feel free to tell us what you thought of this conversation on the CGH social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X.